Are you a woman standing at a crossroads, eager for change? It's time to connect with your authentic and empowered self at Boss Leap. Join Dr. Sylvia Morris and Dr. Angela Walker in this empowering community where real-life stories of courageous and talented women inspire and motivate. Engage in honest conversations that foster well-being, drawing from our own journeys. Let us guide you toward profound growth and transformation in both your personal and professional life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Sylvia Morris and Dr. Angela Walker.
Okay, hello Sylvia.
Hey, Angela.
This is Boss Leap, and we are back again with one of our introductory episodes. And we just felt like we wanted to introduce ourselves in terms of who we are individually, who we are as friends, and why we came together to create this podcast called The Boss Leap. We are hoping that we can share on our platform the stories of women, some that we know, many that we do not know, but all that have powerful stories to tell about how they have created a life of love and passion in their professional lives, personal lives, and how they may have made some boss moves, some leaps in their life, some pivots, and ultimately just make it an interesting platform for us to learn more about each other. And so today I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Sylvia Morris. And I am hoping, I don't know if you have anything to say from the outset, but I'm going to jump in and ask you some questions, but I'll open the floor if you have anything specific you want to say, Sylvia.
No, I'm just excited that we are leaping into this next adventure together. And as we move forward doing Boss Leap, I think there's going to be some incredible conversations that are authentic and just really getting the word out about incredible women and sharing their stories. So with that, I am ready.
All right. Well, let me start with one of the most incredible women in my life, who I had the pleasure of meeting back in the early 90s. So for you, tell me some of the basics. Tell me where you were born and where you grew up.
So I am from Los Angeles, California. I was born at Queen of Angels Hospital. Actually, my birthday is tomorrow as of our taping. I was born on June 23rd. And I was born to Virgil and Dell Morris. My dad is originally from Texas, from Denton and Midland, Texas. And my mother was born in Crenshaw County, Alabama, but was raised in Saginaw, Michigan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Your mom was raised in Michigan? So how did they end up in LA?
So my mother went to nursing school, I would say segregated nursing school in Chicago at Providence Hospital. It was a diploma program, and worked in public health in the city of Chicago. And the story I heard is that it was really cold one winter, as it tends to be in Chicago. And she thought, you know what, I don't really need to spend another winter here, and got a job in Los Angeles at LA County Hospital. Now it's like LA County USC. And one of her classmates, Jean Gooden, was from California, actually Northern California, a place called Stockton. So I think she just went to LA just on a whim.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I can't ask her now, but that is kind of a question. But my parents met at LA County USC. My father was an orderly, my mother was a nurse, and I guess the rest is history.
It's history. I did not know that. I didn't know how they had met. Wow.
Yeah, and my dad went to California because he was in the Army, and I guess spent time in Northern California. There's a base in Monterey, was in the Korean War. And then some of his siblings had migrated to Southern California, a place called San Bernardino, and my dad was in LA.
Wow. And they both stayed there after that transition. So they stayed in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Count.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So as a child, what was it like growing up in LA? What was it like for you? I know your history, but you're an only child.
I am. I
So what
am.
was that like growing up?
It was good. I am kind of a classic LA girl. I know perhaps I don't look like it, but I love the beach. I remember during as a kid, we would go down to the beach and ride my bike. I'd ride my bike along the bike path and play in the sand and sand castles and those things. And those are really happy memories for me. Or we'd walk on the pier and have a little bite to eat. And yeah, so I'm very much a water person. We're going to work on my swimming. That will come in the
Yes.
other episodes. But I think LA at that time in the 70s and 80s, it was a good time to grow up, and that there was a community of Black professionals, definitely like in the Crenshaw district. And so I had Black doctors and I had a Black dentist. And, my mom was a nurse and all of her friends were nurses or teachers. So I saw a community of Black professionals. So it was that thing of, oh, if I see it, then maybe I can be it. And I don't know if she was intentional about it or if it was the circumstances, but that made a huge impression upon me. And Inglewood was a very middle class Black community. And so everyone on my block, their parents were educators or worked in aerospace. And, we all went to school. So it was just a nice little community of people.
That's awesome. My two experiences of the beach growing up, but still, I love the beach, was Atlantic City.
Oh, wow. That's different. Okay.
And Galveston. And
Oh,
literally, I think, growing up, went to the beach twice, but always knew that, it was just magical. It was just transported me. So I envy the fact that you were able to go so often as a kid. We share that love.
definitely. And free entertainment, really, because I'm sure it was like, oh, I can put this kid in the car and we can drive 15, 20 minutes to the beach and she can play all day and be tired
Yep.
and then go home and didn't have to spend a whole lot of money. I know that my mother was pretty pragmatic. That was part of it.
That's awesome. So tell me, when you're growing up, were there any like teachers in your life, anyone that made an impact in terms of like influencing kind of what you feel like your trajectory in life in terms of how you proceeded through making a career choice, etc.
So I always wanted to be a physician. That was the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. And as I mentioned, my mom was a nurse. And so I saw it kind of from early on. But I also had really great teachers from first kindergarten to eighth grade. I went to Inglewood Christian School, and we had really great teachers that encouraged us to kind of stretch ourselves. My third grade teacher, Miss Mayu, I remember her, and Miss McMorris, who I am actually still in contact with. She was our seventh and eighth grade teacher, and discipline was important, obviously, and really having a sense of self is how I would describe it now. She made a huge impression upon us, and just making sure that we were able to achieve and knew that there were high standards. And once I got to high school, Mr. Mallon was my freshman English teacher. And he wrote all of my letters of recommendation when I applied from some of the Ivy League schools when I applied to college. And I think what was so notable is there was some conversation about, I'm not surprised that you are applying. And he really encouraged me. And that just left an indelible mark on what's possible and sort of stretching. I went to co-ed Catholic high school. And I think my graduating class was somewhere in the 300s. And when I think about the number of students that went on to higher education, there were a fair number, but there was a much smaller number of people who went to the Berkeleys or Browns or the Stanfords of the world. And that being able to kind of make the leap from middle class Black girl in Los Angeles to higher education when my parents hadn't gone to college. My mom went to nursing school, and then later on, she went back and got her bachelor's and master's. I remember sitting in the classroom, probably I was in kindergarten or first grade, but being able to kind of have the wherewithal to go to a major university and to be successful, not always successful in science, and we can kind of get to that,
Okay.
But knowing that I could do that. And then kind of finally in college, we had a community of people who really helped us. It was called T8, and we had mentors who helped us in the sciences in particular. And seeing Luanga and Sam and Lisa and my mentors who were able to say, no, you can do physics. You may have to do it twice, and I took physics 8A twice, but you can do this. And it was really important for me to try and gain the confidence, because when I showed up at Berkeley, I was like, well, I was a good high school student,
Right.
but then you're sitting in next to people who have physics and calculus in high school.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't have all that. How do I don't know this. And it's a confidence game. Long rambling answer.
No, that's a very good, because it actually brought up two things that I want to talk about. One is your mom, a little bit more into her career path. But number two, in terms of really one of the reasons why we wrote the book, in terms of, how we navigated our way to Georgetown and medicine. And sometimes the path is not always the quote unquote traditional path, right? So, but I didn't know the part about your mom. So tell me about what that was like. So your mother, who is raising this wildly intelligent child, had her nursing certificate and then went back to school with a kid.
Oh, yes.
What did
So
you see? What was that like for you watching?
Yeah, I think so. My parents were divorced sometime in like the early 70s. My father was always a part of my life and lived, 15, 20 minutes away from me. And that's how I kind of claimed Compton, as well as Inglewood. And when I think about my mom, from what I remember, the reason she went back to school is because working as a nurse, it was hard for her to help me pick me up from school in the afternoon. She didn't have summers off, and she realized that, oh, well, if I teach nursing, then I'll have summers off, I'll have vacation time during the holidays, and it will just help me as far as being a mother and mothering this willful young girl that I have here. So I think that was the reason that she went back. So she first went to Cal State LA and got her bachelor's. And I honestly don't remember what her bachelor's was in, but she didn't have a BSN. And then she went to graduate school. And that's what I remember at Cal State Long Beach, because I remember that she would pick me up from school and then we would drive down to Long Beach. And, I'm a food person. So we would get to eat at Huff's Hut. and there was some hamburger that I liked. And then we would go go to class, and I would sit in the back of the class in a little desk, and I would do my homework. Don't ask me what I was doing. First grade homework, who knows what that was? But she would be the lectures, and I knew I had to sit there and be quiet and not bother anyone and be still.
Wow.
And then we would go home. And I think it was probably a couple times a week, but I remember that. And my mother always very pragmatic, because when she started teaching, first she was teaching high school, must have been medical assistance class for Compton Unified. So she taught at Compton High School. And then she started teaching at Compton Community College, and she taught in the LVN program.
Wow.
And yeah, the rest is history.
I didn't know all that about you. Wow. Talk about some moxie. That's
Mhm.
that's big time. You couldn't help to be who you are. That's beautiful.
Definitely.
Very
She
good, very
blazed a
good.
trail.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about life at Berkeley as a young Black female. And it sounds like you had a really robust minority association there that was, and particularly the medical support. We talked about that in the last episode, something that I didn't have initially.
Definitely. Berkeley, I remember when my mother dropped me off, we had something called Summer Bridge. So they would we could use the word minority at that time. All the minority students would come in sometime in June, and you would just have like an immersion to the University of California. So I think we may have been there from 4 or 6 weeks. But the day that she dropped me off at the dorms, there was a Grateful Dead show. And if you've ever seen Deadheads, as my mother was this very elegant woman, and you see the Deadheads, and she's like, "Are you sure you want to stay here?" I was like, "Oh yeah, mommy, this is great," because I'd never seen anything like that in my life. And I was like, I'm away.
Yeah.
I get to be away from this. I mean, my mother had rules, and there were things.
Yeah.
I was like, look, I'm gonna be here, and you're gonna be 6 hours away. Absolutely, I want to stay here. So she made my bed, and she met my roommate for the summer, and it was great. Berkeley was tough though. Academically, in the sciences, for me, it was really hard because I just didn't have the level of preparation that some of my classmates had. Yes. Not as to say that I could not be successful, but it took more time, energy, and effort. And thank God, my college roommate, who I've known since kindergarten, her name is Tracy Thompson. She's a dentist now. We would be at the library, posted up at Moffitt, or I'm trying to think of the other library with the long, beautiful tables. For after dinner, we go to the library. Library closed at midnight. We would be leaving that John at midnight, going home or going back to our dorm, and then, starting everything over again the next day. Saturday, our study day would be shorter during football season because we always went to home games, go Bears. And Sunday didn't close the library out necessarily, but it was good to have someone who was in my immediate sphere, who was also driven, because my mom dropped me off with the full expectation that I was going to graduate in at least 4 years. It was 4.5. My degree may say 5, but we don't need to know all those details. But it was just, I had the discipline in and of itself, but it was good to have people around me. And definitely, I mentioned TA. We called it EOPAA at that time. And there was a very robust system to help students, Black students in particular, or Black and Latino students in the sciences. And we had a Black pre-health program. So that's how I did volunteer work at UCSF. I worked in the ER, and I literally printed the X-ray films. So that tells you how old I am. They were not digital at that time. You had to actually print the film and take them over. So I did that. And then I did some time with a pediatrician. One of my undergrad classmates, her father, Dr. Carlton Louis, was an old laryngologist, actually for Kaiser. And he always encouraged me. And he was like, oh yeah, you can do it. Yeah, it takes just a few people just to kind of say, yeah, you can do this. Don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. You know, he may have been.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt, but you mentioned it a little while back. There were so many people that I came into, first year of undergraduate with at Texas A&M, that wanted to go into medicine, but because of the, like you said, I mean, sometimes you depend on where you come from in school, and it's so hard. And then you're told that, well, if you're not making A's, you can't be a physician. You can't, you're never going to get into medical school. I know a lot of people that said, okay, I've got to change my major, based on that little bit of experience. And yeah, I think it sounds wonderful. I just want to interject really quickly because this is your time. But for those listeners that, the takeaway is when you're looking at schools, it really depends on where you go and the support that is available at the school. For some people, some people have that in their families or, but sometimes it's really depending upon the school. And I didn't know that. You probably didn't either at the time, how big of a difference that would make, but not having anything in place, when I went into school, to having, a lot of things in place and being able to see people that are doing it and to encourage you, it can make a big difference in a young person's life. So yeah, I was curious what your experiences were there at Berkeley. So
yeah,
clearly, yeah, clearly you were not. I wanted to move on a little bit to Georgetown, because I have to say, when I met you, many things. You talk about your mom being regal. You were definitely the regal one. And Sylvia was Dr. Sylvia Morris, who was going to be our Surgeon General within like 8 years of graduating. You were it. And as Carl, my husband, would call you, Silky Sylvia. You just had that, that way about you of carrying yourself, which is translated to today and all the wonderful things you've done. But tell us about, where that came from, the desire to be Surgeon General, and how that, kind of pushed you in the direction that you were going, transferring from or going into medical school.
Yeah. Lots of kind words. So I'm just going to say we both are card-carrying members of the Mutual Admiration Society. So I'm going to say thank you. But the reason I wanted to be Surgeon General is my mother volunteered at the Los Angeles Union Rescue Mission. And I went with her, and I counted the pills in the makeshift pharmacy. I don't know how legal that is or what the rules are for that, but I was probably 9 or 10 and did that. And there was a physician there, Dr. Frischkeneck, and he provided health care to the homeless. We would call them now. Now I use the word unhoused, but we provided health care to patients that lived on Skid Row. And he made just a fantastic, he provided compassionate care. He didn't care that the person slept on the street, or maybe they smell bad, or they had lice, or was mentally ill. He treated everyone with dignity. And that said to me, oh, it's everyone needs health care. Wow. And how do we provide care for the most people? I then came and college, came to understand the importance of public health. And during med school, I actually met then Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders and worked with Maxine Waters and helped to write a pregnancy prevention program for my congressional district, but really came to understand how important it is to have legislation and policy that then is implemented for the health of the entire community.
Wow.
And later on, we'll get into why I went to public health school and those things in future podcasts.
Yeah.
But yeah, public health is really important. And my journey now, work wise, hasn't necessarily evolved in doing public health practice in sort of a traditional way, but I know that my public health training has made a huge impact on how I practice medicine.
Interesting. You see it that way, but I actually think, I mean, I've known you actually for so long, and the things that you have done in your career path in the media and educating, I mean, that is in and of itself a form of public health. And, you know, making, you know, I think making the public aware of, you know, health things that they should be concerned about, but also things that they can do preventatively to take care of themselves. So yeah, I think you have fulfilled a lot of that purpose that you had back then. So tell us a little bit about us, how we became friends, and what you think kind of brought us together.
Wow. So I remember probably early on, we met at Georgetown University School of Medicine. And it was summer of 92. Yeah, it had to be summer of 92.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all in a classroom. I think there were 21 of us, is a number that sticks in my brain.
Okay.
For gyms.
Yours is better than mine.
And I remember you and Valerie Lewis Morris, had just gotten married. And I was like, wow, they got married before they entered medical school. I thought, oh, okay. And I think there was that part of my brain is like, well, if they are wives and students, they are going to be very focused and intentional about their studying. So I'm like, let me sit next to these ladies so that I can make sure that I'm successful. Because again, my mother dropped me off at Georgetown so that I could become a doctor. And there was no time for half-stepping or shenanigans, as some may say.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember you were always very calm, always warm and inviting. And I was like, oh, okay, she's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we started sitting together. I don't know how we started sitting together in the library, but we did. And the cool thing is you two like to sit at a table. So we'd sit at the table, you, me, and Val. And I was always writing longhand on some piece of paper or some flashcard or whatever, and you would be studying. And you and Val grounded me because my internal person is like, how am I going to do this? What's going on? I don't know. But you and Val were like, you got this. We're gonna learn this stuff and we're going to keep moving forward. So I think from that, and I remember going to your house, you and Carl, and just thinking, oh, it's cozy, it's warm here. There was always something to eat, it's tasty, and yeah. So and
The Walker House.
It's important. It's important. And then we worked together a lot on Student National Medical Association. And that was a really good experience and just sort of budding leadership and learning how to organize people and working with personalities. And I when I think of you, I never remember not knowing you.
Same.
As I think about like our 30 plus years of friendship.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Same from day one. Yeah, you just, you know, you find your tribe It's,
Mhm.
it's part of our, what we talk about in our book is you just, you know who you, well, hopefully, um, at that stage in life, you find who um, really supports you um, mentally
Mhm.
and emotionally, and that brings out the best in you. I think that if I could tell my younger self, is really try to find those people that, for the most part, lift you up versus bring you
Mhm.
down. Because we always have our down days, but you want people that have similar light, that kind of shine that same light. And I think we were just kind of given similar lights when we
Yeah.
were born.
And
So
I honestly don't know how I would have finished medical school without you guys.
mm,
Just can't. I can't imagine it doing it without the kind of support that we provided for each other, and just for our listeners, friendships evolve, and there is not always sort of that everyday touch base, checking in, those things, but just knowing that I can send you a text, and you have an innate way of knowing when I need to talk. And you're like, do you want to talk? I'm like, yeah, I do actually. And then we talk for a few moments, and then everything is good. It's just really important to, as you say, have people in your life that that you can count on, and that support you and allow you to be your most authentic self.
yeah,
So you've seen my warts, and we still are good friends, and you allow me to hopefully evolve. And I think that friendships that you're not able to evolve, that's when kind of the friction
yeah,
comes, and sort of perhaps the falling out.
yeah. And then it's just
Another
time.
podcast.
No, agreed, 100%. And then it's just time, the growth and maturity is being able to identify when it's time to move, not, move on. And moving on can be gentle, and it can be, but it has to sometimes be firm in
Mhm.
resolve, in terms of, this is not serving me well. So, but yeah, I don't see any of moving on. You're with me till the end here. So
You're stuck to me, Angela.
So what, it sounds like you've already given some advice, but like what advice do you have for young physicians? What would you say to young, Sylvia, whether it's from, high school, college, medical school, what type of advice can you give?
For young physicians, my advice is to investigate the things that you think you may have an inkling to like. I wish I had done probably
Herpetology.
dermatology as a rotation in medical school.
Mhm.
I didn't do it. I wish I had. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. And I wish I had gotten an MBA.
Mhm.
And my one of my mentors in medical school said to me, Dr. Eisenberg, he said, "Have you thought about getting an MBA?" And in my naivete, I was like, oh no, Dr. Eisenberg, I want to be a public health physician, and I'm going to public health school, and I'm going to save the world. Not exactly those words, but I just didn't. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I tell everyone that is interested in public health in particular, and who has interest in perhaps doing thinking about your career beyond the bedside, if you have an inkling, maybe get an MBA, maybe give a master's in medical management. And certainly we can talk about that, and we will talk about that in future podcasts.
We have a lot to talk about.
We
uh,
do indeed.
but I
We
think
do.
one of the things, the most important things you mentioned, Dr. Eisenberg, one of my mentors as well, is just an
Mhm.
amazing human, amazing physician. Um,
Yes.
we were able to see him in his element. I remember going to his home seeing him as a dad and a husband. It just, those are people that, it's rare that you meet, people that just kind of have like that whole package that make an impact on you. But he mentored you. And we talk a lot, and we'll obviously be talking to a lot of mentors in the podcast, but how important it is to ask people some of the important questions and to seek mentors. So for us as, physicians, as you mentioned, maybe if you had sought out a dermatologist, you would have known it wasn't as gross as we thought it was, that, the little experience that we had, that it was actually a very interesting pathway in medicine. But identifying those mentors. So I'm glad that you mentioned him. I think it's really important, no matter what you do in life. If you want to be a carpenter, just having somebody in your life that, does it well and that can give you some advice along the way, and being open to, hearing those things. So very important. So describe a little bit about what you do now, because we talked about, some of the things that you thought you were going to do, and what are you doing right now in your career?
So right now, I can actually say that I have a dream job. And I'm saying that hesitantly because the things that you pray for, and then when it happens, sometimes you forget that, oh yeah, I prayed for this and I wanted to be in this situation. So as you mentioned, I have spent a lot of time working to use media to improve public health. And that has been kind of my tagline for at least the last decade. And I've had all the jobs. So when we look at our friend group, I have had lots of jobs in and out of clinical medicine, as a consultant, in academics, and now I work for a large HMO, and I'm an employed physician. But the beauty of my job is that not only do I practice at the bedside, so I'm an internist by training. I work as a hospitalist, and I work in an observation unit. So you're too sick to go home, but not sick enough to go to the hospital. Okay. So I do that about half the time. And then I have an administrative role where I work with doctors who take care of our patients at outside hospitals and trying to make sure that they receive the best care. And if possible, we bring them back to our kind of the mothership, shall we say. And then the most fun part of my job that I definitely had prayed for is that I do marketing for my organization. So most recently, I've done a lot of summer health clips for local media, and I represent our organization in the community, doing community talks and moderating, and as a panelist. And I really enjoy it, and I'm super grateful to be at this point. Oh, well, thank you. I try. And I remember being on the struggle bus for probably about the first decade or decade and a half of my career. So I finished training in 2001 and got my first job coming out of residency. And I was a hospitalist, a traditional hospitalist. And I remember thinking, oh my God, is this it? Is this what I have to do for the next 25, 30 years? And remember, I owed $180,000 when I finished medical school. So I had to work, but I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So hence all the different jobs. But I am so grateful to where I am. No job is perfect. And remember, I work for somebody. So there are pluses and minuses with that. But being able to be in a position where I feel like I work with people who are committed to taking great care of people, patients, and also that I get some of me into it, and that I am, doing the media and community talks and all of these things. I feel, I feel really good. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, you talked about in one of our previous episodes the leaping from the lily pads, and all that journey has brought you to this place right now. And I've had the luxury of seeing all of these steps that just makes this the most, I think, profound moment, in your career, and that you're able to do all the things I knew you could do, but also be happy and feel fulfilled in doing it. So I'm very happy and extremely proud that you're in the position that you're in right now. So, well, kudos to you, which I could do all day long, but that's not the purpose of this episode. So lastly, I think a question you asked me, and maybe I already asked you, but if you could say something to your younger self, to younger Sylvia, what would you say is in terms of advice, knowing maybe what you know now or what your life has been like up to this point? Do you have any advice?
Absolutely. And I tell everyone now, have more fun. And because I am a planner, and I will say that I have lots of people in my life that love me, but I didn't have a whole lot of safety net. So if me going to Berkeley, I had to be successful at Berkeley. I had to be successful at Georgetown because I didn't have any plan B. And that is a blessing, but also can be a curse, because I was like, look, we driving down this road, we're going to continue down this road, and I don't have time for any distractions. And I think being intentional about fun, and certainly don't get me wrong, we've done girls trips, I've done a lot of cool stuff, but and I'm trying to use the word and more, and I think that sometimes the message that I heard growing up, go to school, get a good job, be kind of an upstanding citizen, there was no talk about fun in that or joy. And now at this point where I am in my life, I know that that's really important, and it's infectious, and it's a part of who we are as human beings. And so I tell people to have more fun.
Love it. And that's what we're going to do with Boss Leap. So
yes.
I am so excited to be doing this with you. And I hope that we can transfer our love of life and our joy in what we're doing to the audience, and hopefully address issues, concerns, and just topics that are important to other women that might be listening. So thank you so much, Dr. Sylvia Morris. We appreciate you sharing and opening up. As I know you to be a super fantastic, interesting person, I know you'll be sharing a lot more in our future episodes. And until then, I just want to say to you and to our listeners, may you be well.
Thank you, Angela, and may you be well.
That's a wrap on another episode of Boss Leap. May this conversation enlighten your path toward personal growth and professional empowerment. For more thought-provoking and eye-opening discussions like this one, head to our website at bossleappodcast.com. Always remember to celebrate your wins and trust yourself. A positive mindset can push you out of your comfort zone and into far greater heights. Until next time, may you be well.
Before we go, there's one more thing the lawyers have asked us to include. It's the legal language. And you know how doctors love lawyers. This podcast is presented only for educational and entertainment purposes. Although we are doctors, on this show, we are just your friends. This podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals. Understood? Awesome. We'll see you in the next episode.